From a flicker of candlelight in 1789 to the glare of modern screens in the West Wing, every president has held the pen. Executive orders not passed by Congress, but etched into law by command. Some shaped history. Some sparked controversy. Others were forgotten. Until now. This is where we break them down. Every signature, every shift in power, every consequence still felt today. From Washington to Biden, welcome to Executive Order Watch.
Democracy, we live for it. For democracy, we fight for it. For democracy, we've died for it. And for democracy, we watch it. This is Executive Order Watch.
In 1972, it was a year that tested every ounce of political judgment, diplomatic instinct, and executive resolve I possessed. I stood at the intersection of war and peace, of suspicion and hope, of scandal whispered and victory declared. And yet through it all, I governed with one principle above all else: to serve the national interest, even when doing so meant facing opposition from every side. Let's talk plainly about what happened that year. Abroad, the world watched as the doors to China were opened, not with thunder, but with a handshake. In February, I became the first American president to set foot in the People's Republic of China. It wasn't just a visit. It was a calculated reordering of global power. We turned a Cold War wedge into a potential partner. I sat with Mao, I spoke with Zhou Enlai, and I made it clear America would no longer be boxed in by outdated alliances or ideological rigidity. Then in May, I flew to Moscow, stood beside Leonid Brezhnev, and signed the Strategic Arms Limitation Treaty, SALT-1, the first real step toward controlling nuclear escalation. 2 decades of Cold War paranoia now had a new term: dialogue. It was a moment of vision and one of my proudest achievements. But let's not pretend 1972 was only about diplomacy. Back home, the war still raged. Vietnam cast a long and bloody shadow over everything. I pushed forward with Vietnamization, turning over combat duties to South Vietnamese forces, and I began withdrawing more of our troops. But when North Vietnam launched its Easter offensive, I responded with force. Operation Linebacker, the bombing of Hanoi and Haiphong, was brutal but calculated, and by Christmas, I ordered Linebacker 2, the so-called Christmas bombings, to bring North Vietnam back to the negotiating table. Was it controversial? Yes, but it worked. They returned, and we moved closer to peace, on our terms. At home, 1972 was also an election year, and I campaigned not with slogans, but with a record. I had reshaped America's global position, slowed inflation, and restored law and order. The American people responded. I was re-elected in a landslide, carrying 49 states. But even then, even in victory, the storm clouds were gathering. What began in June as a strange little break-in at the Watergate complex would eventually cast a long shadow. At the time, I treated it as a campaign oddity, an overzealous move by men I did not direct. The press sniffed, the opposition howled, but I moved forward with the business of the presidency. History would judge that decision in ways I could not yet imagine. And throughout it all, the diplomacy, the war, the re-election, and the rising tension back in Washington, I governed with the tools at my disposal. I used executive power where legislation stalled. I issued orders that restructured, reinforced, and redirected federal authority across economic, environmental, and national security fronts. In 1972, the presidency was not merely a political office, it was an engine, and I kept it running at full speed. Now I want to walk you through the executive orders I signed that year. Some made headlines. Others reshaped the quiet machinery of government, but all of them were part of the broader effort to modernize how the American presidency operates, swiftly, strategically, and with full awareness of the stakes. Let's begin. Executive Order 11,639, providing for pay adjustments for federal prevailing rate systems on January 11, 1972. Executive Order 11,640, further providing for the stabilization of the economy on January 26, 1972. Executive Order 11,641, concentration of law enforcement activities relating to drug abuse on January 28, 1972. Executive Order 11,642, further exempting A. Everett McIntyre from compulsory retirement for age on February 1, 1972. Executive Order 11,643, environmental safeguards on activities for animal damage control on federal lands on February 8, 1972. Executive Order 11,644, use of off-road vehicles on the public lands on February 8, 1972. Executive Order 11,645, authority of the Secretary of Transportation to prescribe certain regulations relating to Coast Guard housing on February 8, 1972. Executive Order 11,646, membership of Department of State on the Great Lakes Basin Commission on February 8, 1972. Executive Order 11,647, federal regional councils on February 10, 1972. Executive Order 11,648, amendment of Executive Order number 11,183, which established the President's Commission on White House Fellowships on February 16, 1972. Executive Order 11,649, regulations governing the seals of the President and the Vice President of the United States on February 16, 1972. Executive Order 11,650, inspection by certain classes of persons in state and federal government establishments of returns made in respect of certain taxes imposed by the Internal Revenue Code of 1954 on February 16, 1972. Executive Order 11,651, textile trade agreements on March 3, 1972. Executive Order 11,652, classification and declassification of national security information and material on March 8, 1972. Executive Order 11,653, exemption of Jack T. Stewart from compulsory retirement for age on March 9, 1972. Executive Order 11,654, transfer of the Federal Fire Council to the Department of Commerce on March 13, 1972. Executive Order 11,655, inspection of income, excess profits, estate, and gift tax returns by the Committee on Government Operations, House of Representatives on March 14, 1972. Executive Order 11,656, inspection of income, estate, and gift tax returns by the Select Committee on Crime, House of Representatives on March 14, 1972. Executive Order 11,657, exemption of C. Everett Spangler from compulsory retirement for age on March 22, 1972. Executive Order 11,658, establishment of the Missouri River Basin Commission on March 22, 1972. Executive Order 11,659, establishment of the Upper Mississippi River Basin Commission on March 22, 1972. Executive Order 11,660, amending Executive Order number 11,640, further providing for the stabilization of the economy on March 23, 1972. Executive Order 11,661, relating to facilitating coordination of federal education programs on March 24, 1972. Executive Order 11,662, further providing for the administration of the Disaster Relief Act of 1970, as amended on March 29, 1972. Executive Order 11,663, creating an emergency board to investigate disputes between the carriers represented by the National Railway Labor Conference and certain of their employees on March 31, 1972. Executive Order 11,664, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Penn Central Transportation Company and certain of its employees on March 31, 1972. Executive Order 11,665, James F. Burns on April 10, 1972. Executive Order 11,666, qualification for the investment credit on certain articles and classes of articles of predominantly foreign origin on April 11, 1972. Executive Order 11,667, establishing the President's Advisory Committee on the Environmental Merit Awards Program on April 19, 1972. Executive Order 11,668, providing for a National Center for Housing Management on April 21, 1972. Executive Order 11,669, J. Edgar Hoover on May 2, 1972. Executive Order 11,670, providing for the return of certain lands to the Yakima Indian Reservation on May 20, 1972. Executive Order 11,671, Committee Management on June 5, 1972. Executive Order 11,672, providing for the transfer or furnishing of property under the Postal Reorganization Act on June 6, 1972. Executive Order 11,673, amending Executive Order Number 8684 to redefine the Culebra Island Naval Defensive Sea Area on June 6, 1972. Executive Order 11674, amending Executive Order Number 11640, as amended, further providing for the stabilization of the economy on June 29, 1972. Executive Order 11675, exemption of John S. Patterson from mandatory retirement for age on July 26, 1972. Executive Order 11,676, providing for the establishment of an Office of National Narcotics Intelligence within the Department of Justice on July 27, 1972. Executive Order 11,677, continuing the regulation of exports on August 1972. Executive Order 11,678, providing for the repair and restoration of nonprofit private educational institutions damaged by Hurricane and Tropical Storm Agnes on August 16, 1972. Executive Order 11,679, creating an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Long Island Railroad Company and certain of its employees on August 19, 1972. Executive Order 11,680, designation of certain officers to act as Secretary of the Treasury on August 21, 1972. Executive Order 11,681, revoking Executive Order Number 5221 of November 11, 1929, establishing a limitation on non-official employment of officers or employees of the American government on August 21, 1972. Executive Order 11,682, inspection by the Department of the Treasury of tax returns made under the Internal Revenue Code of 1954 for economic stabilization purposes on August 29, 1972. Executive Order 11,683, revoking Executive Order Number 11677 of August 1, 1972, and continuing in effect Executive Order Number 11,533 of June 4, 1970, relating to the administration of export controls on August 29, 1972. Executive Order 11,684, amendment of Executive Order Number 11,554, suspending the provisions of Section 5707C of Title 10, United States Code, which relate to promotion of Navy and Marine Corps officers, August 30th, 1972. Executive Order 11,685, amending Executive Order Number 10,973, relating to administration of foreign assistance and related functions, and Executive Order Number 11,501, relating to administration of foreign military sales on September 25, 1972. Executive Order 11,686, Committee Management on October 7, 1972. Executive Order 11,687. Delegating functions conferred upon the President by Section 1455 of Title 10 of the United States Code, establishing the Retired Servicemen's Survivor Benefit Plan on October 11, 1972. Executive Order 11,688, amending Executive Order Number 11,399 with respect to the membership of the National Council on Indian Opportunity on December 1, 1972. Executive Order 11,689, extending diplomatic privileges and immunities to the mission to the United States of America of the Commission of the European Communities and to certain members thereof on December 5, 1972. Executive Order 11,690, delegation of certain functions to the Executive Director of the Domestic Council on December 14, 1972. Executive Order 11,691, adjusting rates of pay for certain statutory pay systems on December 15, 1972. Executive Order 11,692, adjusting the rates of monthly basic pay for members of the uniformed services on December 15, 1972. Executive Order 11,693, providing for the closing of government departments and agencies on December 28, 1972.
Pauline's Pizza,
My fellow
where we
Amer-
deliver happiness one slice at a time. What's your craving today?
Yeah, hi. Is Seymour there?
Oh, Seymour. I think he might be busy making our special pies. But hey, why not swing by the pizzeria? We've got a pie with your name on it. Anything else I can help you with?
I was looking for Seymour Butts.
Ah, I see. Well, if you're looking for Seymour Butts, he might be hiding behind a pepperoni slice. Anything else I can do for you today?
No, that's it.
Hi, I'm Terrence, a marketing professional with a passion for helping your business grow smarter and faster. Here at DaBomb Digital Media, based right here in Atlanta, Georgia, we specialize in bringing your vision to life. Whether you're launching your first website or reimagining your entire digital presence, we've got you covered. From modern website design and search engine optimization to setting up your own AI-powered agency tools, we deliver innovative solutions that keep you ahead of the curve. Ready to unlock your business's full potential? Let's build something remarkable together. For more information, visit our YouTube channel. Just search DaBomb Digital Media on YouTube and start exploring tips, success stories, and everything you need to elevate your brand.
My fellow Americans, today we turn the page back to the year 1972, a year etched with complexity, contradiction, and consequence. As we examine the executive orders issued by President Richard Nixon that year, we begin to understand not only how government operated at the time, but how those directives echo, sometimes loudly, into the present day. Let's start with the substance of Nixon's executive orders. In 1972 alone, he signed 55 executive orders, each addressing matters as diverse as economic stabilization, drug enforcement, environmental protection, and federal governance. One of the most enduring legacies of 1972 was Executive Order 11,652, which overhauled the classification and declassification of national security information. For the first time, the federal government created clear guidance on how sensitive documents should be handled, a framework that would influence classification protocols through the Cold War and even into the modern era of whistleblowers, cybersecurity, and government transparency. He also issued Executive Orders 11,640, 11,660, and 11,674, all centered around the stabilization of the economy. Amid high inflation and international currency instability, these orders tried to control wages and prices. The intention was to shield Americans from economic turmoil. But we also know that these kinds of wage and price controls can have long-term consequences on small businesses and consumer markets. It was an experiment in economic micromanagement that we learned from and ultimately abandoned. On the environmental front, Nixon wasn't silent either. Executive Order 11,644 restricted off-road vehicles on public lands. That might seem small, but it was a pioneering move in conservation policy, recognizing that recreation must be balanced with ecological preservation. That same year, he created regional federal councils, Executive Order 11647, a step toward decentralizing federal authority and making sure local communities had a voice in national governance. One executive order that speaks volumes today is EO 11676, establishing the Office of National Narcotics Intelligence. While it was meant to centralize and streamline federal drug enforcement, it also contributed to the groundwork of the war on drugs, a policy we now know had devastating impacts on Black and brown communities. We've been working to rectify those wrongs ever since. And of course, there were orders focused on disaster response, Executive Order 16162, Educational Coordination, Executive Order 16161, and even economic diplomacy through textile trade regulations EO 11651, reminding us that executive orders aren't just political instruments. They're tools that directly affect daily life, policy structure, and economic interaction. But 1972 wasn't just about executive directives. It was a year where America and the world shook from the tremors of politics, war, and scandal. In Vietnam, the Easter Offensive saw intense fighting, while at home, protests against the war grew louder. President Nixon visited China, marking a monumental diplomatic thaw after decades of silence. That move would change global trade and diplomacy forever. The SALT I Treaty was signed with the Soviet Union, a step toward arms control that would evolve into the framework for modern nuclear disarmament talks. But there was also a shadow cast over the year. one that would deepen in 1973. The Watergate break-in happened in June of 1972. At the time, it seemed like a bizarre and isolated crime. But as we know now, it was the opening chapter of one of the darkest political scandals in American history. Trust in government would be shaken, and it would take decades to rebuild. Domestically, the Supreme Court handed down its ruling in Furman versus Georgia, effectively suspending the death penalty across the nation. It was a defining moment in our ongoing national debate over justice, punishment, and human rights. In all, 1972 was a year of profound contradictions. A president expanding environmental policy while deepening the drug war. A nation embracing diplomacy abroad but confronting scandal at home. Executive orders that shaped regulations, education, disaster relief, and federal organization, many of which laid foundations we still stand on today. As we reflect on that year, we carry forward its lessons. We examine Nixon's executive orders not just as documents, but as living instruments, some with wisdom, others with warning. And as president in this present moment, I remain committed to transparency, accountability, and policy that lifts every American, not just for the year ahead, but for generations to come. Number 1, Executive Order 11,652, Classification and Declassification of National Security Information and Material. Signed March 8, 1972. This order fundamentally restructured how the U.S. government classified and declassified national security documents. It was the first to require all classified material to have an automatic declassification schedule, not exceeding 30 years unless exempt. EO 11,652 created clear definitions for top secret, secret, and confidential, and required periodic review for older materials. Effect in 1972. This was a post-Pentagon Papers reform aiming to bring discipline and oversight to the chaotic and overly secretive classification system. It was seen as a compromise, addressing public demand for transparency while protecting genuine national security interests. Present-day impact. It laid the groundwork for future classification reform, influencing later orders such as Executive Order 12,665, Carter, Executive Order 12,958, Clinton, and Executive Order 13,526, Obama. Today's FOIA practices and automatic declassification policies still echo Nixon's framework. Number 2, Executive Order 11,640, further providing for the stabilization of the economy, signed January 26, 1972. This order was part of Nixon's price and wage control campaign. It created regulatory committees to monitor inflation, rent controls, and wage ceilings, an effort to fight stagflation, high inflation with low growth. Effect in 1972. The order was highly controversial. It temporarily curbed inflation, but also disrupted labor contracts and created black markets. Many businesses were confused or defiant toward the limits imposed. Present-day impact. Though wage and price controls are no longer used, this EO stands as a case study in economic intervention. It remains a cautionary tale in economic textbooks about the limitations of executive control over markets. Number 3, Executive Order 11,644, use of off-road vehicles on public lands, signed February 8, 1972. This EO directed federal agencies to develop rules for off-road vehicle ORV use on public lands to protect the environment and ensure safety. Agencies were told to designate areas for ORV use and prohibit it in sensitive zones. Effect in 1972. This was one of the earliest national efforts to control motorized recreation in natural spaces. It was seen as progressive environmental policy during the Nixon administration's broader push to appear eco-conscious. Present-day impact. This EO influenced the U.S. Forest Service and BLM's land use strategies. Today, ORV zoning, wilderness preservation, and environmental impact assessments all build upon this foundational directive. Number 4. Executive Order 11,676, establishing the Office of National Narcotics Intelligence, signed July 27, 1972. This EO created a centralized narcotics intelligence office within the Department of Justice. It was designed to gather, analyze, and share data on drug trafficking, usage trends, and enforcement effectiveness. Effect in 1972. It intensified Nixon's war on drugs policy. Intelligence sharing improved among agencies like the DEA, formed in 1973, but it also led to escalated enforcement tactics and mass incarceration patterns that followed. Present-day impact. This order was an early brick in the prison industrial complex. Though the ANI was later absorbed into other structures, the logic of centralized drug enforcement still persists and continues to shape today's criminal justice reform debates. Number 5, Executive Order 11,647, Federal Regional Councils, signed February 10, 1972. EO 11,647 created 10 federal regional councils to improve interagency coordination and decentralize federal planning. Each region included federal representatives tasked with working together across departments to solve local problems. Effected in 1972, it promoted cooperation between agencies like HUD, EPA, and DOT in areas like infrastructure, housing, and pollution. Local governments welcomed it as a way to cut red tape. Present-day impact. Though the councils were disbanded in the Reagan era, the idea of regional coordination reemerged in Homeland Security and FEMA. Today's regional emergency planning protocols owe a nod to Executive Order 11,647. Number 6, Executive Order 11,662, further providing for the administration of the Disaster Relief Act of 1970, signed March 29, 1972. This EO amended and strengthened EO 11,575, streamlining disaster response coordination and empowering the Office of Emergency Preparedness with broader authority during federal disasters. Effected in 1972, this EO helped the federal government respond faster to emergencies like Hurricane Agnes, which hit in June 1972 and caused billions in damage across the eastern U.S. Present-day impact. The order shaped FEMA's later development. Concepts of federal disaster zones, aid coordination, and interagency roles from this executive order still influence today's natural disaster playbooks. Number 7, Executive Order 11,685, amending EO 10,973 and EO 11,501, foreign aid and military sales, signed September 25, 1972. This EO restructured aspects of foreign assistance and military sales administration, granting more flexibility to the State Department and USAID in coordinating foreign military and economic aid. Effect in 1972. It was a Cold War maneuver, enabling Nixon to streamline arms deals with allies like Iran and South Vietnam, strengthening U.S. strategic interests without direct military escalation. Present-day impact. This EO reflects the shift to proxy diplomacy that continues today. Military aid programs, especially in the Middle East and Eastern Europe, still operate under procedures evolved from this framework. Number 8, Executive Order 11,651, Textile Trade Agreements, signed March 3, 1972. EO 11,651 established rules for implementing textile trade agreements, especially under the short-term and long-term arrangement regarding international trade in textiles, LTA/MFA. It enabled enforcement of quotas and import limits. Effect in 1972. This EO gave the U.S. tools to curb textile imports from countries like Japan and Hong Kong, aimed at protecting American textile mills. Present-day impact, modern trade enforcement, especially mechanisms in NAFTA, USMCA, and WTO compliance, has roots in structures formalized by this EO. It also marks the beginning of tension between globalization and domestic industry protection. Number 9, Executive Order 11,670, Return of Lands to the Yakima Indian Reservation, signed May 20th, 1972. This EO returned 21,000 acres of land to the Yakima Nation, correcting past encroachments. It recognized broken treaty obligations from the 19th century and helped restore tribal sovereignty. Effect in 1972. This was one of the first modern examples of the federal government acknowledging historical injustices and acting, however partially, to restore native land rights. Present-day impact. This EO contributed to today's growing legal and political movement toward Native American land sovereignty and environmental stewardship. It's frequently cited in tribal land cases. Number 10, Executive Order 11,686, Committee Management, replacing EO 11,671, signed October 7, 1972. This EO redefined how federal advisory committees should be formed and regulated. It created stricter rules for transparency, sunset provisions, and regular evaluations. Effect in 1972. It responded to concerns over bloated advisory committees with unclear purposes. The goal was a leaner, more effective federal bureaucracy. Present-day impact. This EO laid the foundation for the Federal Advisory Committee Act FACA framework still used today. Any public committee advising federal agencies is governed under principles first standardized here.
Some write history with blood, some with laws, but the sharpest stroke comes from the pen. Executive power ain't just a tool, it's a weapon wielded by the few, affecting the many. They sign it, we live it. They order it, we obey it. Here, watching, digging, remembering. From the plantation to the proclamation, from internment camps to civil rights stands, from surveillance laws to student loan draws. Porter can change your life, and you might not even know it, but now you do. So stay locked in, stay woke, stay sharp. We ain't just talking about power, we tracking it. Executive Order Watch, and we ain't blinking.